Let me tell y'all something. Have you ever sat so calm in a courtroom, looking at the very man who thought he was about to humiliate you, only for him to find out right there in front of the judge, his lawyers, his side chick, and half that nosy courthouse that he was the one about to get buried? Mm-hmm. Because that is exactly what happened to me. My husband walked into that courthouse with his mistress hanging off his arm like she had already won. Like I was supposed to break down, cry, beg, shake, maybe even run out that courtroom embarrassed. Child, I did not move. I did not blink. I did not give that man one tear. Because while Richard Lopez thought he was about to strip me of my dignity, my money, my children's future, and my peace, baby, I had receipts, stacks of them. DNA receipts, bank receipts, hotel receipts, mistress receipts. You are a lying, scheming devil in $1,000 suit receipts. And I had one more thing: time. See, Richard thought I was just sitting at home being the good wife, the patient wife, the foolish wife, when really I was watching, I was learning, I was collecting. And by the time that fool stood up in court and told the judge my twins might not even be his, oh baby, it was already over. Now, before I spill all this tea, get comfortable, because this story got betrayal, greed, hidden money, a side chick who thought she was the prize, and one courthouse morning that turned into a public funeral for two people's lies. And no, I don't mean a funeral with flowers. I mean a funeral with paperwork. My name is Eli Lopez, and the day my husband tried to deny our children in open court was the day I finally stopped being his wife and became his karma. So let me take you back. That morning, the courthouse doors flew open with a bang so hard it made half the hallway look up. And in walks Richard, tall, smug, pressed suit, expensive shoes clicking against that polished floor like he owned the whole building. And on his arm, a little blonde thing named Vanessa, tight red dress, too much perfume, too much confidence, and that fake smile some women wear when they think they just stole somebody else's life. She was gripped on his arm like he was the prize, and he was eating it up. That man walked in like he wasn't headed to divorce court. He walked in like he was headed to an award show, like somebody was finna hand him a trophy for most disrespectful husband of the year. I was sitting on a wooden bench outside courtroom B, quiet, still, navy dress on, hair pulled back, hands folded in my lap, and I watched the whole little performance, every last second of it. Richard leaned down to that girl and whispered, all smug and slick, "This is going to be easier than I thought. By the time I'm done with her, Eli won't have a penny." Now see, that right there, that would have been enough to make some women lose it. But me, I just sat there and looked at him, because a man is the most dangerous kind of stupid when he thinks he's winning. Vanessa gave this dry little giggle, the kind that sound like cheap champagne and bad intentions. Then she said, "And then we can finally be together properly. No more hiding." Girl, I almost smiled right then. Not because it was funny, because it was pathetic. See, women like Vanessa really do think the story starts when they arrive. They see a husband in a suit, a big house, a black card, a powerful name, and they think, "Ooh, this is my movie now." No, ma'am, you are not the leading lady. You are the plot twist. And baby, plot twists don't get comfortable. My lawyer, Patricia Williams, came and sat beside me. Sharp suit, sharp mind, sharp tongue. The kind of woman who don't waste words because she don't have to. She looked over at Richard and Vanessa, then back at me. "You ready?" she asked. I stood up slow, smoothed my dress, and looked straight at those courtroom doors. "I've been ready for months," I told her. "Question is he ready?" Patricia gave me that little side smile because she knew. She knew exactly what was in that folder, exactly what was in that envelope, exactly how hard that man was about to choke on his own lies. Now let me tell y'all something about Richard, because men like him do not become monsters overnight. That's what makes stories like this hurt so bad. They start off good, or at least they start off looking good. 8 years before that courtroom mess, Richard was not the man y'all see now. Back then, he was ambitious, yes. Brilliant, yes. Driven, absolutely. But he also had this softness to him, this warmth, this look in his eyes like he really saw me. That was the man I fell in love with. I met him while I was working at a campus coffee shop, trying to pay my way through law school. Baby, I was tired. Double shifts, textbooks costing too much, feet aching, smile on my face because bills don't care if you exhausted. And in walks this tall man with slightly messy hair, a simple button down, and eyes that lit up every time he talked about technology like it was going to save the whole world. He came up to the counter and said, "Large black coffee." Then he paused, looked at me, and said, "Actually, make it 2. You look like you could use one too." Now, normally, that would have earned a side eye and a dry, "Sir, cash or card?" But something about him felt different. Maybe it was the way he asked me what kind of law I wanted to practice and actually listened to the answer. Maybe it was the way he remembered how I took my coffee. Maybe it was the way he talked about his startup like he wanted to build something useful, not just something profitable. By the end of that week, Richard was timing his visits around my breaks. By the end of that month, we were walking across campus together at night, laughing, dreaming, talking about the future like it belonged to us. He brought me sunflowers because I once mentioned they were my favorite. Not expensive roses, not some flashy rich man move. Sunflowers. He remembered the little things. That's how they get you, baby. Not with the grand gestures, with the details. When his company took off, I was right there. When the first investors came calling, I was right there. When his little startup turned into millions, then tens of millions, then more money than either of us had ever imagined, I was still right there. And for a while, he was still him. He paid my law school tuition and called it partnership. He cried at our wedding. Real tears. Not them fake little courtroom tears rich men save for damage control. Real tears. We got married in a garden behind the very coffee shop where we met. Simple ceremony, beautiful vows. And for the first few years, we were happy. Not fake social media happy. Not caption happy. Real home happy. Then I got pregnant with our twins, Olivia and Nathan. 2 tiny miracles on a cold December morning. And Richard? That man was over the moon. He came to every appointment, read parenting books, talked to my belly at night, held those babies in his arms and cried like the sight of them had cracked heaven open. For a while, he was a good father too. Hands-on, present, bedtime stories, midnight feedings, diapers, little kisses on foreheads before business calls. And the scary part? Those years were real enough to make the betrayal later feel like somebody poisoning your memories. Because that's what cheating does. It doesn't just mess up your present, it reaches backward, puts dirty hands on your memories, makes you question what was real. Anyway, somewhere around the twins' 3rd birthday, things started shifting. The company had gone public by then. Richard was rich. The kind of rich that changes how the whole world responds to a man. People listen different, smile different, flatter different. Women look longer. And weak men? Weak men start believing that attention is proof of greatness. More meetings, more flights, more late nights, more, I'm doing this for us, baby. More calls during dinner, more anniversaries interrupted by one urgent thing. And me? I did what too many good women do. I adjusted. I understood. I picked up the slack. I told myself he was stressed, told myself this season would pass, told myself the man I married was still in there somewhere. But baby, the devil does not always arrive loud. Sometimes he slip in quiet, wearing success, smelling like ambition, hiding inside the words, I'm just busy. That's how it started. The phone sleeping face down, calls in other rooms, more care about his reflection, more gym, sharper suits, a little too much cologne. And me? I saw it. Maybe not all at once, but women know. Oh, we know. We may not want to know, but we know. And the first time I knew was on a Tuesday. I was in our bedroom folding laundry, one of them regular wife moments nobody writes songs about, and his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I was not even trying to look, but the screen lit up, and there it was. Missing you already, baby. Can't wait for our weekend in Miami. Miami. Now, Richard had told me he was headed to Seattle. My hand froze over that laundry basket, and I stared at that phone. First thing I did was lie to myself. Maybe it's spam. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe I read it wrong. Because sometimes the truth be standing right in front of you in high definition, and your heart still begging for blur. But when Richard came upstairs later that night and found me sitting there on the bed with his phone in my hand, the look on his face told me everything. Not confusion, not innocence, panic. Deep, guilty, soul-sick panic. Elia, what are you doing with my phone? And I looked at him and asked one simple question. Who is Vanessa? Baby, that man went white. Not pale, ghost white. Like all the blood in his body, packed a bag and left. He stood there trying to decide which lie to pick first. Then he sat down and said, She works for me. I just stared at him, because men really will stand at the gates of hell and still try to start with the smallest lie first. She works for you, I said, and your employee texts you that she misses you, calls you baby, and is excited about y'all little weekend in Miami? He tried, It just happened. Girl, just happened? That line right there made something in me go cold. Nothing just happens. You chose that woman. You chose to text her. You chose to spend time with her. You chose to lie. You chose to sleep with her. You chose to come home and kiss me after being with her. Each word hit him harder than the last. He said he was going to tell me, said he could end it, said we could do counseling, said he loved me. And that was the moment I finally snapped. Not loud, not wild, just sharp. You do not get to say you love me, I told him. Love does not move like this. Love does not lie to my face while making plans with another woman. He reached for my hand. I pulled mine back so fast he looked slapped. That man did not get to touch me like he still belonged to me. Not after that. Not after months of lies. Not after letting me raise our babies and hold this house together while he financed his own disrespect. That night, I slept in the guest room, and the marriage ended before the paperwork ever did. Now, old Eli would have wanted closure. Old Eli would have wanted him to confess every detail. Old Eli still believed in emotional honesty. New me wanted documents, because feelings can lie. Paperwork rarely do. So while Richard went off to work pretending his world was still manageable, I started mine. Research, records, receipts. I hired a private investigator named Janet Rodriguez. Small woman, quiet voice, eyes that missed nothing. The kind of woman who probably knew you were lying before you even sat down. I told her everything: the text, the lies, the trips, my suspicion that this had gone on way longer than he admitted. Janet sat back and said, "Mrs. Lopez, if your husband is as wealthy and arrogant as you say he is, he's probably been sloppy. Men like that always think money makes them invisible." I liked her immediately, because that was exactly what Richard had become: invisible to himself, visible to everybody else. Within days, Janet had photos. Richard and Vanessa entering hotels. Richard and Vanessa at expensive restaurants. Richard and Vanessa shopping together. Jewelry stores, airport lounges, intimate dinners. A whole little counterfeit love story, funded with my family's money. She slid one picture across the table. Vanessa smiling, wrist out, diamonds glinting. "This bracelet," Janet said, tapping the photo, "was purchased with your husband's credit card 3 months ago. $35,000. I just stared at it. 35,000. And that same week, Richard had told me we needed to be mindful about household spending. Chill. That was the first time I laughed. Not because it was funny, because the audacity had reached cartoon level. Imagine a man financing his mistress like a luxury side project, then coming home to talk budget with his wife. That ain't just cheating. That's evil with a spreadsheet. Then Janet kept going, and the deeper she went, the uglier it got. Because Richard wasn't only cheating, he was moving money. Hidden accounts, shell companies, offshore mess. Millions being shifted around in ways I was never supposed to notice. At first, I thought maybe it was just rich man chaos. Maybe it was unrelated. Then Janet laid out the timing. It all lined up with the affair. He wasn't just building a secret romance. He was preparing a secret exit. He was planning to leave me with as little as possible while he started a new life with that girl. That right there, that hurt worse than the sex, because now we were past lust, past weakness, past temptation. Now we were in the land of calculation. I sat in my own living room, tea cold in my hand, while Janet showed me how my husband had been quietly trying to erase me financially. Millions moved beyond reach, accounts I didn't know existed, structures designed to make him look smaller on paper than he really was. And then came the ugliest discovery of all. Hidden in Richard's home office, in a file he clearly thought I'd never find, was his full divorce strategy. Not just money plans, not just legal notes, a blueprint. Fake claims that I was unfaithful, plans to paint me as unstable, ideas for damaging my reputation, and worst of all, a strategy to question whether our twins were even his. Our twins, the babies he held the day they were born, the children who ran to the door yelling "Daddy," the children he had read bedtime stories to. Baby, that was the moment something inside me broke clean in half. Because cheating is one thing. Planning to erase your own children to save money, that is another level of rotten. I sat there with those papers in my hands and thought, oh, so this is who you are. Not just selfish, not just weak, wicked. That was the night I stopped crying. From that point on, I was building a case, not for my marriage, for my freedom, for my children, for justice. So I called Patricia Williams, not the family lawyer, not some soft little mediator, a shark, a divorce specialist, the kind of woman wealthy men hate because she knows exactly where they hide things. When I told her what Richard was planning, she got quiet and then said, "Then we build a case so strong he chokes on it." And baby, that is exactly what we did. We gathered everything: photos, bank records, transfers, emails, phone records. DG's take messages recovered from devices he thought were clean. I even had software track activity on his computer. And what that software gave me? Oh, baby, the devil's diary. Messages between Richard and Vanessa where they talked about me like I was some obstacle to be removed. Conversations about custody, about painting me as unfit, about paternity lies, about how to minimize child support. One message from him said I was getting suspicious. Vanessa replied, "Then we need to move faster. File before she gets prepared." Another one? That one burned. Richard wrote that he needed an exit strategy because I could take half in a divorce. Half? Half. Baby, I built that life with him. I stood beside him, Jite say, before the money, before the boardrooms, floor, not the favor. That's when Patricia told me something important. File first. And I said, good, let's do it. But BG say we filed. I made one more move. I ordered DNA tests for the twins. Not because I doubted one single thing. Please, them babies are many versions of that man. I did it because I knew he was going to say try that ugly little stunt in court. And I wanted the answer waiting before the lie ever left his lips. Then Janet dug deeper into Vanessa. And baby, that girl was not some innocent little assistant who fell in love. No, ma'am. She was a professional. This was not her first rich married man. Not her second either. Richard was one in a pattern. California, New York, now my house. She researched wealthy men, got close, got hired, got personal, destroyed marriages, then walked away with money. And the worst part? Richard thought he was special, thought she loved him, thought he was the exception. Men with money love believing they're irresistible, when really they're just well-funded. Vanessa had a whole system: messages, coaching, pressure, pushing him to move faster, telling him to deny the kids, telling him to build doubt around me, calling the whole thing business. That word right there made my skin crawl. Business? You are talking about my marriage, my babies, my life, like it's a transaction. So I made a decision. I was filing first, not waiting, not reacting, not begging, moving. Because once I knew the side chick was a strategist, I understood this was never just adultery. This was an operation, and I was about to shut it down. We filed on a Monday morning. By noon, Richard's phone was blowing up. By evening, mine was too. Richard called from his office sounding furious. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Elia?" Protecting myself, protecting my children, protecting what belongs to this family. He tried to act shocked, tried to act like I had blindsided him. Imagine that. A man planning to bury his wife suddenly upset she showed up with a shovel too. Then his lawyer called. Bradford Chin. Expensive. Ruthless. The kind of man who bills by the hour and talks like fear is a negotiation tactic. He threatened custody, threatened financial investigations, talked about paternity tests like they were about to shame me. But what they did not know, I had already ordered the DNA tests. Because unlike Richard, I wasn't afraid of the truth. Those babies were his, absolutely, unquestionably. And when his team started using words like reasonable settlement and supervised visitation and be practical, I laughed. Because arrogant men always mistake a calm woman for a scared woman. I told them no deal, no crumbs, no intimidation. If Richard wanted a fight, then let the courtroom decide who was lying. And that brings us back to that courthouse, back to Vanessa in that red dress, back to Richard strutting in like he owned the day. The hearing started. Judge Harrison took the bench. Older man, gray hair, eyes that looked like they had seen every kind of marital ugliness there is. Bradford Chin stood up first, smooth as oil, and started selling lies. Said I had been unfaithful. Said I was financially irresponsible. Said the marriage had become untenable because of my behavior. And then, there it was, the nasty little move. They requested paternity testing because Richard had serious doubts about whether the twins were his. Baby, that courtroom shifted. People in the gallery leaned forward. Reporters started scribbling. Richard thought that was his power moment. It wasn't, because when Patricia stood up, she stood up calm, boxes ready, evidence stacked, voice steady. She said my husband had conducted a 2-year affair, hidden over $75 million in marital assets, and plotted to abandon his family while minimizing what we would receive. At that point, Richard's face changed, because now he understood. I knew. Not some of it, all of it. Patricia started simple, affair first. She asked him directly if he had been involved with Vanessa. He tried to wiggle, tried to duck, tried that weak little I refuse to answer. Judge Harrison shut that down immediately. This was civil court. No hiding behind drama. So Richard had to say it. Yes. Quiet, embarrassed, barely audible. Patricia made him repeat it, again, out loud. Yes, he had been involved with Vanessa. Yes, for 2 years. Yes, while still living as my husband. Yes, while still sleeping in my bed. Yes, while lying to my face. And baby, once a liar gets pinned down under oath, their soul starts leaking out their forehead. Then Patricia shifted. Money. She introduced financial records, transfers, accounts, shell companies, the whole shiny little fraud puzzle. Then she hit him with a number. Over $75 million, she said. You could feel the room react. Even the reporters looked stunned. Bradford Chin tried to object. Judge Harrison waved him down. Patricia asked Richard if he was familiar with one Cayman Islands account containing $12 million transferred from joint funds. Richard started stammering about investments. Patricia sliced right through it. This isn't an investment, Mr. Lopez. This is money you moved while planning to leave your wife. His face turned from pale to ash. And then came the kill shot. Patricia held up the DNA results. Confirmed. Final. Absolute. Olivia and Nathan were Richard's biological children. Completely, unquestionably. No room for doubt. That smug look slid clean off his face. Vanessa stopped smiling too, because now their cute little paternity strategy? Dead. But Patricia still wasn't done, not even close. She pulled out the recording, the one captured from Richard's own computer. Bradford Chin tried to stop it, said it shouldn't come in. Patricia reminded the court that the computer was marital property, legal, admissible, and Judge Harrison let it play. Baby, when that recording started, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Richard's voice came first, talking about ending things quickly. Then Vanessa, sharp, cold, calculating. I'm tired of pretending to be patient while you figure out how to get rid of your baggage. Baggage. That's what she called my children. Then Richard pushed back just a little, weakly. The kids aren't baggage. And Vanessa hit him with, they're not your kids, remember? That's the story we're going with. The story we're going with. In open court, on audio, with reporters present, with the judge listening, with his own lawyers looking sick. Then it got worse. If the tests show they are yours, she said, then we go to Plan B. You fight for custody. Claim she's an unfit mother. Either way, you minimize your financial obligations. Baby, the room erupted. Gasps, whispers, reporters typing like their fingers were on fire. Even Bradford Chin looked like he wanted to evaporate. Judge Harrison had to bang his gavel to restore order. When the courtroom finally quieted down, he looked directly at Richard with that expression old men get when they have run out of patience and found fresh disgust. In that moment, the whole day turned. The man who had walked in like a conquering king, gone. Now he looked like a coward in an expensive suit. Vanessa sat stiff in that gallery chair, red dress suddenly looking less like confidence and more like evidence. Patricia kept going. She introduced more messages. Vanessa coaching him, Richard whining, them discussing me like I was a business obstacle, them discussing the children like they were financial burdens, and the more that came out, the smaller they both got. That's what truth does, baby. It shrinks wicked people down to their real size. Richard had built this whole identity G-Day power. Tech genius, billionaire, boardroom king. But in that courtroom, he was just another selfish man who let greed rot his soul. When it was over, when all the evidence had been laid out, when every lie had been dragged under bright legal lights, Judge Harrison ruled. And baby, the relief that moved through my body when that G-Day came down, I can still feel it. Not because I was happy my family had shattered. No, there is always a sadness there, a grief for what should have been, for the man I thought I married, for the father my children deserved. But there was also something else, satisfaction, justice, that deep, quiet feeling that comes when somebody who played in your face too long finally G-Day me primary physical custody. Of course, because unlike Richard, I had actually been protecting our children all along. His visits, supervised until he completed counseling, because one thing that recording proved, loud and clear, was that he was willing G-Day use those children as leverage. The hidden assets pulled back into the light. The money he thought he buried, found, counted, judged. I was awarded approximately half of the G-Day cash, including money he tried to hide, and enough support to make sure my children would be secure for life. And Vanessa, oh baby, her little luxury fantasy cracked right down the middle. The district attorney's office took interest in her role. Conspiracy, fraud, patterns. Turns out when you make a habit out of targeting wealthy married men, eventually somebody puts the whole map together. Her days of playing sexy little home wrecker for profit, over. And Richard, he walked out a side door of that courthouse looking broken, not humbled, broken. For a moment, our eyes met across the plaza. And Lord knows, I could have said a lot. I could have gloated, could have reminded him he traded his whole life for a woman who treated him like a stepping stone. Could have reminded him that he lost his children's trust, his money, his reputation, and the respect of the whole damn room. But I didn't say a word, because by then, consequences were already speaking for me. That evening, I went home. The house felt different. Not lighter exactly, just honest. Olivia and Nathan were waiting. Their little faces, their little voices, their little hearts still trying to understand a world adults had made messy. I read them a bedtime story that night, and while I was tucking them in, Olivia looked up at me and asked, "Mommy, are you sad about the divorce?" Whew, baby. Questions from children will humble you fast. I took a breath and said, "I'm sad that our family is different now, but I'm not sad that we're going to be okay." Then she asked, "Are we going to be okay?" And this time, for the first time in a long time, I knew the answer. Yes, sweetheart, we're going to be more than okay. We're going to be happy. And I meant it, because happiness built on lies is not peace. It is just decoration on top of decay. Real peace? Real peace starts when the lies are gone. 6 months later, I got a letter from Richard's lawyers. He had taken a plea arrangement related to the hidden assets: probation, community service, full cooperation in returning what he stole. Vanessa had been indicted too, conspiracy and fraud. I read the letter, folded it, filed it away, and kept moving. Because by then, they belonged to my past. My future was about my children, my work, my healing. The settlement money helped me open my own law practice, and baby, you already know what kind of law I went into. I started helping women going through ugly divorces, women being lied to, women being underestimated, women who had spent years thinking loyalty would protect them from a man's greed. Because one thing about surviving betrayal, if you survive it right, it turns into purpose. On the first anniversary of the divorce, I took Olivia and Nathan to the park where Richard and I used to walk back when we were young and broke and still hopeful. The same park where he once told me he wanted to change the world. And as my babies ran ahead laughing, chasing each other, sunlight on their faces, I stood there and realized something. Richard did change my world, just not the way he once promised. He changed it by breaking my illusion, by forcing me to see clearly, by pushing me into a version of myself that was stronger, sharper, less naive, and a whole lot harder to play with. And maybe that wasn't the future I had once prayed for, but baby, it was still a future. A good one, a true one, a free one. So let me tell you the lesson. A man can cheat. A man can lie. A man can hide money, hide phones, hide hotel keys, hide whole other lives. A side chick can think she won because she got the man. But if that man came to her already rotten, sis, that is not a prize. That is hazardous material. And if a man ever mistakes your softness for stupidity, that is when he signs his own downfall. Because sometimes karma does not come screaming. Sometimes karma comes organized. Sometimes karma comes with legal folders. Sometimes karma wears a navy blue dress, says very little, and waits for the perfect moment to let the whole room watch a liar collapse. And baby, that day, karma looked just like me.